working in design consultancy, both in-house in big firms as well as in design and innovation consultancy called Fjord in London. And then in the year 2020, in March, I went to visit my parents back in Slovakia, and funny thing happened called COVID and then closed the borders. And without really planning to, I happened to be locked inside my home country and I stayed home. So I kept doing my work in London, working from home, but actual home, but doing my job in London, which I did for a year, and then became very, very depressed because I didn't really go to an office, and it was quite a weird situation where I was at home, but then working in London, and my mind was very confused. And then I started to look what are the different opportunities that I could be doing this innovation work back in Slovakia, and I thought that was impossible. And then I realized there was loads of interesting work that was happening actually in the public sector. And never having worked in public sector, I thought that wasn't a chance of me getting in, but then okay. Oh, okay. that wasn't the plan. Okay. That's what we call innovation. Let's see what happens now. Oh, it's magic. Okay. Well, we're all in this together. Anyway, so I was just, so I sent an email to the city of Bratislava, and I was like, hi, my name is Lucia. This is what I'm doing. I'd love to do some work for the city. Would you have any opportunities by any chance? And then they just called me and they were like, yeah, do you want to come in for a week and we see how it goes? So I came and it went well. And I'll tell you more when we get to the slide. Oh, no? Not yet. You see, now I feel like all my tricks are out of my sleeve because you saw it all. Okay, here we are. I'm just going to take you on a journey. Let's imagine the past minute didn't happen. You didn't see anything. We're still here on this slide. So we're still me emailing my boss in the city of Bratislava. We had a very progressive mayor who did a lot of change. So I email not the mayor, but people who work for the mayor. And they say, yes, let's come in. I had a background in strategic foresight, and they were doing this project called Bratislava 2030, which was creating a new strategy for the city. So that's what I started to do. And they gave me loads of these massive Excel sheets, which each department wrote down all of their different goals, and it was quite technocratic. And what I did was I sat down in a room for a week and I look at all of the Excel sheets, and I try to find what are the things that we have in common. And how can we put this together in a way that is not so technocratic, but instead it creates a little bit of a human vision. So instead of having these, I think it was over 240 different very technocratic goals, I created this vision of Bratislava as caring, accessible, and resilient city for 2030. And we created a whole publication where we actually turn these goals into little narratives for the inhabitants of Bratislava so they can understand what the life in the city would look like. And based on that work, I always say, when you create a strategy for Bratislava, then you understand the taste of power. And then I was like, that's not enough. What about the country? And that's when I was invited to work for the Research Innovation Authority at the Government Office of Slovakia, where we also worked on the National Strategy for Research, Development and Innovation, Slovakia 2030. So by 2030, I better be out of the country because I'm really curious how will that work out in reality. But I will talk about that project a little bit more later. So and now I clicked. Afraid what's going to happen. Maybe nothing. Okay. So then the work that I've done on the development of the innovation strategy led to the creation of the design unit, which I always say is a design unit that never existed because we were a group of designers, but we never called ourselves designers, and we did a lot of service design work, but we never called it service design. Yet that's what we did. Okay. Just to give a context, because I think it's very important to kind of understand the state of the country and where we sat to better understand why was it possible to start doing a different way of work at the government office. So it was back in 2020, there was a lot of change happening in Slovakia. We had a big corruption scandal, a journalist was murdered, and as a result there was loads of protests and kind of civic unrest, and people were standing up, and kind of it was the second Velvet Revolution, a lot of movement. There was a big change of the government, so we had election, we had a new president, good old Zuzana in our heart, who was very progressive and came with a very different type of leadership and politics. Then we have the parliamentary election, then after very, very long time. I mean, that was like 14, 15 years. There was a change in leadership, which meant there was a lot of feeling of change and opportunity all of a sudden happened in Slovakia. And because it was also 2020, loads of people who were Slovakian living abroad came back. And these people actually went to public service because that's where all the interesting opportunities were happening. There was a lot of funding from the European Union, and also because that's where kind of the interesting job was. So we were where the unit was set was under the Government Office of Slovakia. So the new prime minister, his kind of primary topic, he took innovation, and he created a new department and created a new chief innovation officer, who was my boss, Michala Kršková. And then we were kind of set under the resilience plan, and that's where kind of all these people who came from abroad actually went to the resilience plan, and there was loads of kind of departments and that. So including the department where I was, Research Innovation Authority, it's a good word, authority. From now on, just VAIA, we'll call it. That's how we call it in Slovakian. And under this VAIA department, we had loads of different kind of divisions. Was also design units. So what happened then? Kind of anything, we had the strategy, and then anything that no one could take under them. For example, the talent management, innovation politics kind of went under us. So the whole kind of journey of the design unit started with an experiment. I was still working for the city of Bratislava, and the same way how it kind of works in mine and yours countries. My boss went for lunch with her friend who worked in the Innovation Authority, and they talked, and she said, we're doing this new strategy and we are trying this new thing called design thinking. And my boss was like, oh, I have a girl who did this in London. Do you want to have her for a couple of hours? So they talked, and next thing I know, this works a lot better when there's no delay, is all I'm going to say. Next thing I know, this is me with 100 people in the government office of Slovakia, Hotel Borik. And the way how they approach innovation was very interesting. So the chief innovation officer, my boss, got this brief from the prime minister who said, Slovakia is really struggling. We were big on car manufacturing. Doesn't work that well. We're not very good at research, not very good innovation. It's not have much going on for the economy. So there's a need to do a new research development innovation strategy. I'll just call it RDI from now on. So what they did was they actually started doing kind of in-depth interviews. So they talked to loads of different people in the ecosystem. So that would be people working for startups, in academia, high schools, people working in big companies, big corporations, also big kind of development centers, and trying to understand what's going on, what's the status quo right now, what's working, what's not working, what are the biggest barriers of research, where is it that we want to go, and what can we could do to actually get rid of all those barriers. So started to involve people in the process. After they've done over these 100 in-depth interviews, if you do design thinking, you might know these as empathy interviews. They all sat down, did a big synthesis of all the information, and they kind of identified 10 policy areas where if we do interventions and suggestions, you can have long-term it can have a long-term effect on how does the ecosystem is working. And then I've arrived at the point after the point number 2. So when they had all of these 10 policy areas and for suggestions, and we started talking about how can we then invite the people from the interviews again and do a little bit of a co-creation session. So how can we work with them so they themselves come up with the ideas for policy. And the idea they had was we'll design a workshop and we'll do it 10 times for 1 time for each of the areas, and we'll invite people. And this would take a lot of resources in terms of kind of space and place, people's time, also our time. And as we were discussing this, I realized that it's going to be me who's going to facilitate all of these workshops. And you know, I hate monotony, and I love change. And the idea of having to facilitate the same workshops 10 times is, to me, as close to hell as one can get. So I raised my hand and I was like, you know what? What about instead of doing 10 workshops 10 times, we'll do 10 workshops at the same time. So that's 100 people. And for some no reason, my boss was like, okay, that's a good idea. We've got 2 weeks. So then I went back home. I thought about it again. I had a little cry, and I was like, yeah, sometimes maybe some ideas should stay in your head. But anyway, we did it, and it was great. It was the first time I've done a lot of design thinking workshops in my career. This was the first time I've done it with 100. We should have been somewhere else by now. This is no. Okay, there's a slide missing. So what we did was we got 10 by 10, so 100 people into one room. This is Hotel Warwick. Some of you might have been there. It's very kind of like where all the ministers go to have conferences and celebrate their birthday. So this was all of the people from the interview. So that was the first time that these people met in one place. There were people from startups, people from academia, some students as well. So it was like a big melting pot. They were divided in different tables, and each table was a one policy area. So the people were chosen, but the idea was that the teams were multidisciplinary. How to facilitate such a feast? So we called it a festival. That was kind of the first way how we approached it. I think that's why some of the people came and they expected something different, but we did our best. And the way how it worked was that I trained the people in my team. So each of them was kind of very beginner, yet better than nothing facilitator for each table, just making sure that whatever the people were discussing was kind of headed towards the goal. And then we also got some people from Google Slovakia who have a very interesting CSR program where they are very open to supporting others, especially public services, and doing innovative ways of working. So they kind of gave us these facilitators and trainers for free, and they came and kind of helped us facilitate the whole thing. And then I was kind of the master facilitator, where from the imagined podium, I was kind of given instruction and making sure we were all on time. And kind of what helped us to make this happen and turn this into work in reality was that we spent a lot of time designing the methods and tools that were on the tables. So we created this canvas for kind of policy areas that explain very quickly, very clearly about what we need, what kind of change needs to happen, and people had to describe into great detail about what are the idea they are trying to communicate and how to present it. So it was kind of the methods help us to facilitate the workshops itself, even over the tables. So we divided in 2 days. There was a half day and then the second day, again, half day. And I was really worried that after the first half day, no one would come back again the next day. Even more people came and we ran out of food. So that was tough. And then it turned into quite a nice party. Until this day, I think this is one of the moments that people keep talking about, like, remember the Innovation Festival? And I'm like, I do. And I remember I was still, I was just kind of advising, I wasn't working there full time at the time. I remember I woke up that morning and I was like, this is going to be the worst or the best moment of my career. And it's fine because it also might happen. I'll just never see these people again. I'll go back to England and they never talk to me again. But then they hired me. So I think I stayed. And the question was how to get all of these people into the workshop without calling it design thinking, which no one would understand. And they would think we would just sit down and draw. So we used this magical word that I don't know if it works in Czech Republic or other countries, but we have this word called participation. And it's very well used. It's very famous in Slovakia in public service, where when you call something participation, people understand that you will require them to participate. No one really knows what it is, but people love to use it. So we call this participatory workshop. No? Anyway, so we call this a participatory workshop. And the people came. Oh no, here it is again. You know how they always say that when you go to public service, there's always something that just doesn't work. I'm glad the same happens in Czech Republic because we look up to you. Anyway, we're here again. Petr, ty to věří jakože rukou presunout zpětně, jak se musím klikat jako chudě, děkujem. Okay. Thank you. Further. I feel like my talk is a prototype and I'm fine with it, okay? I won't take it personally if you won't take it personally. Okay. Teraz mi to už vůbec nefunguje. To lepší, když jsem poštěpal sem, ne, jasno, tak děkuji. Are you going to make a joke now?
This is my cue in. This is the moment where you need to say something in order to ease the atmosphere in the room. I said I was sticking to the script before I bragged, and I veered right off it, right? And I didn't tell you the most important thing of the morning, and that is on your name tags, you can scan the QR code. It's an old technology, but it's very innovative. And it will get you right to the Slido where you can ask Lucia questions. You can skip those how you feel when the presentation is not working. You can skip that question. And you can think about other questions, right? And after Lucia finishes her presentation, you have more than 15 minutes, no, less than 15 minutes to ask whatever you want to ask. If you don't do that, you risk me asking Lucia questions, and you don't want that. So scan your codes.
Crying even more than now.
Scan your codes and come up with your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so at the end it worked. I think that's what I was saying now. It worked really well. And as a result, then we took in all of the kind of suggestions that came from the people. Even the Prime Minister came at the end, and it was just all very kind of warm and fuzzy experience. And what was, I think, the most important thing for us was it was for us as a new department to build relationship with the people who are actually the people who will be affected by the strategy the most. It was to show transparency and to show them the way how we're working and to listen to them. For them, I think for the most of them was the first time that someone listened to them and tried to understand actually what are the issues that they are dealing with every day by trying to do some research and innovation. And most of those issues were actually caused by the government and the processes that we were creating, for example, in terms of access to funding. And it was also important because at the end, we created a first draft of the strategy, was sent back to the people, and it was open for comments. And most of the people commented. We did quite a lot of changes based on those comments, and they actually had more interest in actually providing comments because they were part of the creation, and also the buy-in then of the final strategy was a lot bigger because people felt it was theirs. And the most importantly, it was a strategy that was co-created with those that were most impacted by its outcomes. So after we had the experiment with the Innovation Festival, we then decided to create a design unit, which was kind of a prototype of what that kind of approach could look like full-time in public service. So it was the three of us. I got a little bit of money to hire a little bit of people. So I hired a guy who was kind of a beginner UX, which is user experience person, but he worked in the Ministry of Informatization for many years. So he understood all the backstage processes and legislation and administration, which is a thing which I didn't understand, and it's just not really my strength. So that was good to have him to do all of that kind of work with us. And then we had one more junior girl who was a social researcher. So she was kind of doing all of the design research that we were doing for our projects. That was our little motto, which in translation means research, development, innovation instead of downfall, stagnation, and tradition. So we're quite on it. What we did was two main things. First was design thinking for the needs of administration. So anytime there was a problem of people trying to do roundtables and being stuck in discussion for months or years, we kind of came in as a SWAT unit and did design thinking workshops that usually helped. So we're kind of trying to inseminate these new ways of working across all the different departments. And the second one was doing service design. So it was actually design doing for the needs of the citizens, whether it was a participation in policy making, or it was actually doing citizen-centric services. And we can talk all about those a little bit more. And then, as I said at the beginning, was that we were a unit that never really existed, was because there wasn't really a funding for design units per se, but there was a lot of funding for something called talent. So Slovakia has the second highest outflux of people in the European Union. I think it's the only kind of scoreboard where we're doing quite well, but it's not the scoreboard where do you want to be doing quite well. Most of our talented people leave to Czech Republic. You're welcome. So there was loads of projects to do with kind of people, and loads of the issues were the questions that you can best approach with design approach. So that's kind of how the design unit was part of the talent unit on the paper, but actually most of the projects we do had to do with talent. Attraction, acquisition, and retention. So the first project we did was called Innovation Fellowship. And that was kind of an open brief where we were told that there was loads of really smart people abroad, the diaspora, so it was the Slovakian people living abroad, and how can we better get them back to Slovakia? We need the knowledge, we need their skills. There was loads of kind of initiatives before when they tried to give these people money. They were like, if you come back to Slovakia, you get 20,000 euros. How great. It didn't work, surprisingly. So what we did instead, we started with doing some in-depth interviews with actually people living abroad and trying to understand what would motivate them to come back, and actually what are the biggest barrier to come back. And what we understood was most of those people had really nice career and the kind of the cost of moving was too high, but they were very happy and open to actually bring their knowledge and skills back to problems in Slovakia. So we then changed the research question not to look at how to bring people back to Slovakia, but how to bring the skills and knowledge back to Slovakia, how to better engage the expertise abroad to the problems that we are facing back home. And as we were talking to these people, we understood it wasn't the money that were motivating them. It wasn't this kind of like super need to save my country that was motivating them. They were very happy to do that. But the barrier was that because they've been living abroad, they were really missing the network to be able to understand and see what the meaningful opportunities are. So what they were interested in doing was impact. So they wanted to do impactful work where they could see they can still help their country without having to move. So looking at these kind of findings, we then developed a program. I always call this a little bit of a meta program because we developed the program doing design sprint, which some of you might know, but the program itself was built as a design sprint. So we had a very concrete exercise for them. So the Slovakia need to create a new decarbonization strategy. So we created kind of a very structured program based on a design sprint. So we run in 6 weeks. It required a multidisciplinary team, and then people worked at all times together with experts to then create a new concept for the decarbonization strategy. But apart from doing this, what was very important, I think one of the reasons why people applied for this program was something that I called the animation of free time. So we created loads of networking opportunities for them. So we took them to loads of interesting institutions. We brought them to places where they can meet more people like themselves, loads of people who lived abroad and they moved back to Slovakia, and kind of created all of these free time activities for them as well. As a result, we ran this as an Instagram campaign. We got quite a lot of very good people applying. And then as a result, at the end, we got 6 people who actually came to Slovakia and spent 6 weeks over summer with us. So we were facilitating the program, but they were kind of like a self-run unit. They sat with us and they loved it. And as a result, they created a new concept for the decarbonization strategy that was then put into practice, I hope, at least at that time. But most importantly, all of them stayed involved in different working groups at different ministries. 2 of them spent a year doing like their gap year at the government office of Slovakia. 1 of them went back to Paris, came back now. He's working full-time in Slovakia. So all of them stay with us in touch in some way. And even though that wasn't our KPI to kind of make people stay, loads of them did, and that was a very, very good outcome. It created a lot of very positive buzz. There was loads of media attention. I think it created a lot of good kind of feeling that, okay, something is happening, and it was the first time that the governor was like, come back, we're open, we are going to give you the opportunities. The second project that we did, and I love this one a lot, was one-stop shop for migration and integration. We were approached by the Ministry of Interior Affairs, could that be? Ministry of, is that how we call it? Ministerstvo vnútra. And they came to us, and because we were in the talent unit, we needed to attract a lot of talent, mostly from third countries, because people from other countries, they come to you, not to us. The issue was that this is the migration police, and people usually camp in front of the migration police since 3 in the morning because the queues take longer than 24 hours. So these people from the ministry came to us and they were like, we've got some money, we're going to open a new center for the migration police, so we can just a bigger building so we can deal with the people quicker. And we listened to all of these issues and we listened to what they were saying, and then I looked at them and I was like, the funny thing is, these people, they don't want to come to the migration police. We make them come to the migration police. And they're like, oh. And then I was like, let me tell you about service design. So we managed to get these people on board, and they're like, okay, why don't you do the thing that Lucia keeps talking about, and then we'll see. So the opportunity they gave us was to design a new service center to kind of offload the immigration police. And what we did was that, now I give you all the answers. What we did is that we went actually to the migration police and we spent a couple of days shadowing what was going on. So we talked to the people who were standing in the queue. We talked to all those policemen and policewomen who were working there. Some of them had this desire to show us their guns. So we're like, okay, we're kind of looking at what's going on. We talk to the people who were running the center, and what we understood was that over 70% of the visitors to the migration police came just to check the information. There was no one central portal that would tell you the exact information. There was lots of information on the internet, on different websites that was contradictory. And they came to check if the police got their application in mail, so sent by the post. So we went back to the client, the people from the ministry, and I was like, guys, we don't need a new room. We just need a new website, which I think is a lot cheaper and easier to do. So they were like, yeah, that's great, but we still have this room. We need to do something with it. So as a result, this is kind of what we did. Through that later. So as a result, we created a new website called Welcome to Slovakia, which is a nice digital touch point where people have all the information is in the official kind of design. It had kind of the stamp of approval. This is true. And the second layer of that was actually an application portal where you can do your application online and you can check the status of your application. So you don't have to go to the migration police to ask someone, how is my application doing? Since we also had the space, we were thinking about what is the second biggest issue that you have when you come to a new country is integration orientation. So instead, we actually got some architects on board. They did it for free because they thought it was a lovely project, which I agree with. And we created this idea, how can you work with materials to make the space welcoming so it doesn't feel like you are in a government office of migration, but so it feels welcoming. People can, no matter what language you speak, you understand. So we use a lot of iconography, and actually how can we create that as like a hub of Slovakian culture? You can understand how can you spend your free time, what can you do? So it's a little bit of a nicer place. And just to kind of show you what is the service design approach, some of you might be familiar with the service design blueprint. So after we've done we've done loads of interviews on the migration police, but we also talk with a lot of embassies in countries where the people are coming from, such as Vietnam and India. We talk to now you understand how I don't know how to translate these things. Úrad sociálnej práce, veci a rodiny, so the people who deal with the social stuff and your work. So kind of we talk to everyone involved. We talk with International Center for Migration, so all of the kind of NGOs working with these people. So we talk to all of them and try to understand what is the journey of someone thinking about going to Slovakia to the point that they actually are living in Slovakia long term and they are part of the kind of community and they're part of the country itself. So we kind of mapped how kind of complex it is. Who is at the top, you've got the employers. Actually, we look at from the point of employers. Actually, the point is to get to a workforce. So kind of what is the journey of the employer? What is the journey of the citizen that wants to be coming when they're happy, when they're, this is the one that we suggested. So now everyone is happy, but the first state, as this state, they were mostly unhappy. Kind of what are the expectations that we have from them, what documents they need to have ready, what are all the touch points. So you see how many different kind of touch points, which is websites, places they go and so on, where they have to deal with. And then what is the job of the state and their services. And this was our suggested state where we created kind of like one new digital system that can all sit on, but it was just how complex. So that was that. We had the whole concept ready and kind of handed it to the Prime Minister, and then we had the elections. So yeah, migration, not a big topic in Slovakia now. Anyway, so it ended with a vision, which is, I think, a nice way to end. Which was me and my boss, we always had this vision of designing it is really nice, but actually how might we create a government innovation hub that actually would be the place, it was like a think tank, where all the policies that would be relevant for this would be done in this more design-led approach to policy making. That was kind of where we were headed, and the idea was that then the Research Innovation Unit would just become more about the research innovation, and we would move as our own little thing. But then, yeah, the election happened, and again, innovation wasn't the main really thing they focus on for unknown reasons. But anyway, we've got some lessons learned, at least. So I have it divided in 3 sections. The first one is about talent, and I think dealing with talent was one of the biggest struggles that we had in the design unit, and it was kind of a big decision for me. What kind of people am I going to hire? As I knew I only had 2 people and I didn't really have that much money to hire top talent. So I did was I focused on getting full-time, what is really hard to get freelance. That's why I got the guy who kind of was average designer, but was very good in understanding the processes. I mapped out what the things that I'm very bad at, which was all of these kind of processes and legislation terms, as you can see. So I got them full-time, and then was kind of getting freelance work from people such as copywriting, kind of design leadership, and mostly an expert advice that we could just ad hoc get from people, and they were happy to do it. We also got some expert mentoring from agencies who were very happy to kind of help the state, because they were also frustrated about the state of, for example, digital services. So they were very happy to do it then for free or for lower margin. And also, talking about public impact is quite strong to kind of sell collaboration. So we got loads of support and collaboration from other people, just because they really wanted to be part of it, and because there was a big movement of change. I think people just wanted to be part of it because it was quite nice. How we got buy-in to actually be able to do this work was we avoided calling it design. So I tried not to call it design until the very end. The participation worked. That's my little trick. If there's one thing that you take with you, is participation. And I was very clear on communicating how we'll solve the people's problems. So every time we tried to sell them the design approach, my first job was to understand what is the problem that the person is solving. So with the migration guys, that was like the police can't do their job. They are overstretched. Focus on their problem and trying to sell them the solution as their problem. The way that I was going to do it in a design way was just my little secret. And very important, make friends with colleagues who know how to write project proposals for funding. So the funding is never written for design work, and you need to be very creative on how to kind of do it. So the Innovation Fellowship, the program when people came, was written as a series of events. And it took a lot of collaboration, a lot of goodwill of my colleagues who knew how to write this in a way that everyone would be happy. And the lesson learned from the last point, which is a failure to launch some of the projects, mostly the immigration, was to me, and even that we failed to launch the Government Innovation Hub, that to me, I feel like a concept in the drawer is a better concept than no concepts at all. Election repeats every 4 years. Okay, we'll just wait. It's fine. In the meantime, I was like, I'll just go to the private sphere, get more skills, come back. It's okay. To me, I love design process. So for me, process as an outcome, it's enough. To me, it's very important that we manage to get those people on board. For me, it's really big success that I got the permission to do this work at the government office, and then no one ever really told me no when we came with crazy ideas, such as the Innovation Festival. So to me, just this kind of infiltration of the thinking to me is very important. And lots of people stay there and they still kind of think about those, they use the Innovation Festival as a frame of reference. And to me, that's very important. So don't underestimate the ripple effect. If once they kind of experience this, they can always go back to it and kind of lives on its own further and further. And to me, it's a foot in the door for the next election. So for the next time the opportunity comes, you've already had the network, the people, and they will know these are the people who did this work. And it's more likely that you will then get back in and you've got the little concept in your little drawer that you can just flip out. So what's next? I'm working for now. I'm back in the agency work, doing kind of design thinking and strategy and service design for a company that actually did. One of my boss was also part of the Innovation Festival. We didn't know back then, but I also did a lot of design work for both. They designed the whole systems for the new kind of design language for the country and so on. So it's a nice place where I can still do some impactful work, but it's just a little bit less stressful. Yeah, that was me. There's time for any questions. I think there's also a QR code, which I now learned is an old school technology. My LinkedIn, because you see, I like change, so I change jobs quite often, but LinkedIn stays the same. That's it. I think it's time for questions.
I'll read them for you loud. And I might change some of them. I might add some of mine. Yeah, it is. I call it tailoring. No, I'm just kidding. The first one is a good one, so I'll just read it out to you. How do you maintain hope that the change is possible?
I don't know if you've ever done this personality test called Gallup, where they look at your strengths and leadership talent. So I've got positivity as number 3. I'm also quite cynical, so having both that kind of works. No, but real answer is I think I was quite hopeful because I was new to public service. So I didn't have kind of the burden of experience of how bad it could be. So I came in with this like very positive mindset of this is how it should work. And I think that helped a lot. And also just seeing how much change could happen in such a short period of time. So within that first half year of the department running, a lot of change happened. I think to me, it shows again that when the opportunity windows opens again, it can happen quite quickly.
Thank you. We sometimes hope that change is possible, right? But for those of you who've been following the news for approximately past 3 months, civil services of the Western world get to know that if they're resistant to change, it's going to happen anyway, but in ways that are way less pleasant than Lucia's. How can we systematically identify opportunities for innovations in public service?
That's a good question. I think that's why it's important to do the insemination of innovative ways of working. The ideal world, kind of my vision was that my idea was that each ministry or department would have few people who understand these methodologies and these ways of thinking, and the job of these people is to spot the opportunities, and they don't necessarily need to be able to do the work full time, but then they need to be kind of our little agents who can then see, okay, we've got these problems that we are facing. This is a good opportunity for design approach, and then tell us, and then we can. So I think it's a network of kind of your little design. I don't want to use the word unicorns, but people who understand the process and can spot the opportunities.
Yeah. Once it's a network, they're not unicorns anymore, right? This is a follow-up question, actually. Do you see an increase in demand for design among government officials after they've experienced it in Slovakia or elsewhere?
At least when I was there, then they were called, I was called the lady from the 6th floor. So that was kind of how they called the design thinking approaches. And I think the people who experienced the festival then would be like, oh, we'll do the same thing we did at the festival. So it was kind of coming back to us. And some of the work was that us kind of looking for the opportunities. A lot of that work was people asking for our help.
Okay.
And also they was part of the kind of like a training that was offered by the government was all of a sudden a design thinking workshop, but it was done online by a lady who lived in Bali. So I was a little bit skeptical and did not attend. I think others did.
One of the preconditions I mentioned at the beginning is resources for innovation. So how can you give us an idea how about the budget for design activities and projects like the one you mentioned? How much?
In absolute
what should we?
numbers?
Well, probably, yeah. What should we budget for when we want to start a process like the one you started?
Well, I think mostly is people's time. To me, actually doing this innovation work in public service is easier than doing it in private sector or in agency, because in agency you're chargeable and it's very difficult to sell the uncertainty of innovation to your client when you're unsure about the outcomes. Whereas in public sector, you're paid anyway, whatever you do. So you kind of get the luxury of that. No one is kind of checking your chargeability as they would have done in a different setup. So you kind of have the time, as long as you manage to kind of make the time to do that work, well, then that's what you do. But if in terms of absolute numbers, I don't know if I can give you the answer because it depends. I mean, for the Innovation Festival, the only cost was, the food and drink, because the people were working anyway, and all of the other people attended for free. So, which is magical, but I think they all just were kind of excited about the process. And then the rest was just projects.
Thank you. What skill or competence do you miss most in the CSA?
I always, maybe I'll change the question to what are maybe the innovation skills that I think people that understand are actually needed to have then. One of them is be open to work with uncertainty, and I think that's very difficult. An innovation process, by definition, requires you to feel uncertain most of the time, and if you don't, then you're not doing it right. And I think being okay with feeling uncertain is very difficult for people who are kind of living in a very kind of rigid structures, and the work is done that way. And I think the resilience is very important. I was pretty burnt out after those 2 years. And I think it was a combination of trying to do design work at the level of, I felt that work in a creative agency, McKinsey, and then public sector at the same time, which just is not really good for you. So you kind of really forced to run these innovation sprints that happens quite quickly. There's a lot of pressure to do good work. You don't really have enough people. And then the people you have is not the greatest talent because you can't afford to hire the greatest talent. And at the same time, you want to do something, and there are these really strange barriers of just like the really weird legislations and the kind of practicalities of, I don't know, how to just to get them. For me, it was easier to pay for things myself, I don't know, for some events than just trying to get it through the procurement. So I think that.
As the head of the unit in the government, head of innovation unit, based on what criteria did you choose the project that you worked on? Where did the initiative come from?
Because we were part of the talent unit, loads of that came from the strategy. So we did the national strategy for innovation, and a big part of that strategy was talent and talent policies. So the talent policies gave us a number of projects that was part of what the strategy was supposed to achieve. So loads of them kind of came from that. And the others, such as the one for the Ministry of Interior, came from the ministry because it was all around attracting talent, and then because people knew we were doing this, they kind of took us in. And I think the way how we chose the project was that if we had the buy-in from the other side, I'll call them the client, so the people understood the way we were thinking, they were open to the approach that we wanted to do. A, B, we could do research. We would never do any design work unless we could do the research in the field with the people who were impacted by that the most. And C, we felt that then the work we do actually has some impact and has a high chance of being implemented.
Lucia, thank you very much. Now this is the second time when you clapped. And thank you for your patience with our clicker. You know that we are fostering a learning culture here, which is something we all say at places like these when things go south. We say we learn from our errors. See you next year with our new clicker. It works for me as a moderator as well. If I veer off script, I say that I feel the psychological safety around here, and I don't feel bullied when I say European Council instead of Commission. So my apologies, career ruined. Let's move on. Our next guest is not from Slovakia. He's from Latvia. And as I mentioned, Czechs often say, well, if you want to do those British things here, I want to remind you there's not enough Brits in here. Latvia is a small country. There's not enough Latvians even in there. So I believe we can learn from this one. Please welcome the head of the Innovation Lab at the Latvia State Chancellery, Jānis Kinasts. Mike.
I'm rather scared of it actually now. Can I use the laptop? It will be, yeah. It's proven in a battle, so. I really identified with an idea being lady from the 6th floor, because here is the weirdo from the basement. Yeah, absolutely. I would then add some silent comments from the shadows that these are those weird dwarves with tinfoil caps as well, and all they do, they play with post-it notes. And okay, we can do a Lego Serious Play workshop there, but unfortunately, we won't put any pictures in media because, sorry, it's Lego. Nevertheless, $1 billion business that has completely rearranged how people learn. My name is Jan Stienest, and I come from Latvia, where there are less people than we need there to be. That will stick with me. And that's amazing. You're a really, really good host. I already feel welcomed here. The last time I was in Prague was 3 years ago. I met with some American friends who came to visit Europe, and they chose Prague as a central point. And it was hotter then. It was July, but I think this time Prague looks and feels even more beautiful. I come from Riga that has suffered a trauma during war, and I think Prague is a city that Riga could have been without the war. Absolutely, absolutely breathtakingly beautiful place. I used to be that external consultant who was outsourced for more than 10 years whenever somebody in public sector, either at the state or municipality, would love to do something. My background is environmental science and only then design, and design through art, not like product design or whatnot. Until I joined State Chancellery 2 years ago, I worked at the intersection of urban planning, creative industries, and placemaking. So my mission is to help people create better places, to make them, simple as it is. And in doing so, not to do it for people, but with people. So I won't be saying anything new. I will just add to your beautiful presentation and the story. And what I feel in the air is that we are slowly, slowly arriving to the tipping point where what we talk about becomes a normality, a normal aspect of contemporary praxis, whatever it is, either public administration or private. I worked in university as well. So there will be 4 distinctive dimensions that I will try to interlock within the next half an hour. There will be a big part of abstraction. There will be a part of concept thinking. There will be a part of structure. And there will be a part of models. And I will try to present those models through some cases. You won't see too many text on screen. I will try to communicate with you through the pictures. Picture tells 1,000 words. And then I will show you how prototype talks 1,000 pictures. But putting it all together, I will just try to unpack one picture. Everything what follows is interlocked within that picture. We draw before we speak. There is intrinsic capability that connects all us as human beings, where the mind is, how the tacit knowledge works. So whatever you hear now from now on comes from in the middle of what's happening here, here, and here. The greatest 3D printer ever invented. And I think that is what we need to understand when we talk about innovation, whenever or wherever it happens. We need to bring stuff together. We need to gather either people, either resources, or whatnot. I joined State Chancellery because of my daughter, and as naive it may sound, thank you, little Anna, because I also were in this super, super low point in my life. I turned 33. My daughter was born, and I was at the lowest point ever. So basically, the beautiful combination. But of course, when you are deep in a valley, you can see the mountains. And precisely as you mentioned, I think we all share in Europe the same as the culture shifts and the mentality shifts, but we share the cultural space that we inherit and we inhabit. And I was privileged to see and super happy to see, wow, a unit, an institution that is state chancellery, that is, I wouldn't call above ministries, but somewhere in between prime minister's office and all the ministries as a coordinating power, central government, needs a designer. And was, oh, wow, finally, the fight we've been trying to win has paid off. Something has happened. The story of Latvia State Chancellery, basically Innovation Lab, the state of our team began in 2018. I didn't work there, and it began as one person trying to do some things from time to time, organizing some design workshops, some informal gatherings, something different than the public administration used to work back then. And for 5 years, that person changed. And basically, as now, as a future historians, we call it was nomadic time of evolution of the lab. We wandered around and there was only one person. Things changed 2 years ago when I joined the team and the team exploded. And the practicality is that as privileged as we are to do what we do, we are also constrained within the formalities. The national state budget for our team is rather small. We feed from 2 European Union funded projects. I think that is something that we can share as a relevant experience in the room. How a project for me as a designer is actually absolutely something different as a project is for a public civil servant. For me, project is the critical content, what change is what you want to bring into being, not like from A to B and filled with key KPIs and exercises. That's of secondary value for me. But of course, we are locked in that, but we are grateful that we have possibility to fund our little weird team in the basement, consisting not of one who is nomadic, but for six people who are settled. So that's the second sort of, even in geological times perspective, the second phase of evolution. We are now in it. But we have a lot of challenges to cover, and I will try to unpack them as humane as possible. So who are these 6 people? And I think it would be interesting for you just to see it, how these 6 people who work together can do things differently, because these 6 people are different, and we are not civil servants by default. We are designers who turn to be civil servants, and I think we still have this naivety and also maybe something else that allows us to be a bit more free, and that freedom within the creative space, I think, is something we need to defend as a practice. Structurally, we look like this one. There is a big project that will end in 2027 that is dedicated to public services, public digital services design. And another project manager who is back in Latvia is alone in that project. Hence, European funded projects. How do we call them? Parameters or characteristics of those projects. One person's trying to manage 20 digital services design sprints scattered across 4 years, 5 sprints, huge ones, really big ones. Then there's another 4 people where I do the project management tasks. We have a coordinator, expert, and assistant, and also I need to do all the things that is in that liminal space between projects, that would what we call to be head of the lab, as much as I hate that title. It doesn't say anything. So what we do, first of all, we understand where we are locked in and how the formalities and everything else, institutional frameworks work in government. But first of all, we don't call each other colleagues, we are team. So the first thing that we do, we constantly, and that is something that you can do even if you don't have designers, you can work consistently with the language that you are using. How do you talk not to people, not about people, but with people? So this is how we look structurally, and as being this government conference, I knew that you would be interested to see how that part of the team functions. Our backgrounds come from environmental science, spatial and urban planning, digital humanities, data science, social work, art, and above all, or within that all, design. So it is a rather unusual combination for not even state chancellery, but that kind of level of public administration in Latvia. And we are proud to defend that fortress with all experience we have. Few words about principles and process. How do we work? And this is where we kick in that abstract thinking. When I started to work 2 years ago in state chancellery, the project I need to manage, and now the team we need to, like as a verb, team that needs to be teamed, I was given 150 pages of project. Hey, Yanis, on the first day, this is the project you need to manage. You know, the famous picture where do something innovative, but it must fit precisely in that frame. So, of course, being a designer, what I started to do, I started to draw. I put aside the text that I need to implement with all the activities and exercises and blah, 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 what I need to achieve. How does it look like? Can I represent it not by or with, but through drawing? And I put a dot on a page. And I said, okay, this is the innovation lab we need to build. How do we build it? How do we make it? What do you do with it, with this idea that is a dot, that is something that is rather that is not? You need to make it bigger. You need to make it visible. You need to understand that there are some things that are in it and some things that are out of it. Waldo Tobler's second law of fundamental geography: whatever happens in a place informs what happens outside a place. Whatever happens outside a place informs what happens in a place. The first fundamental law of geography says all the things in space and time are connected. Things that are closer are better connected than those things that are further. There is a border in between what can happen in a lab, what cannot happen in a lab. If we want to work with people, we need to open up that place. It must be open for people to come in and come on out. It must be accessible for people. How many doors do we keep up? Do we open only one door, like a physical, how they come into our space? Or do we conceptually think about more than one door? What is to conceptually think about more than one door? How people can come into the lab, be a part of the lab. Lab being not just a physical location and space, but place, therefore gathered, experienced. Here comes the placemaking in. Maybe we need not fewer, but more doors. What happens if we conceptualize the doors of being dimensions, like what constitutes that place? So maybe people would be willing to come into that place through specific characteristics, not like physical, just that it's open from that time, blah, blah, blah. And we start to work, okay, what are the 4 dimensions of the lab? And do these 4 dimensions of the lab could fit with the projects we need to manage? And wow, this happened. Those of you who are familiar with the famous, there's a story before British Design Council came up with a diagram. There is an amazing, by the way, American Hungarian languagist. The double diamond comes from language theory, by the way. So okay, there's some sort of movement happening. I think we can conceptualize the flows, or how does it behave? What do people do when they first come into the lab, what they do the next? So we started to conceptualize what is our lab through design process itself. So we started to design the designing. And that is something that I think is fundamental for innovation. First of all, you need to generate thinking that can think other thinking, as wild as it sounds. Okay, there's some axis in it. There is some introduction, there is the way how people come in and then go out, there is ups and downs and then dimensions. And slowly, just by tinkering around, we understood, okay, of course, lab is going to be connected with external environment. It's embedded in larger landscape. There's a dimension of scale where we are. We can easily become really myopic and tend to think only about what is lab without thinking where is it situated or located. And we slowly through just circling and drawing lines without organizing anything, just by doing thinking through drawing, came to first ideas of what our lab is going to be like and what will be this conceptual framework that will be adaptive and flexible, and we will bring this framework to the problem, not vice versa. And I think that's a fundamental error where when design and innovation labs make a rigid frameworks and then bring problem into that framework and try to break it apart, not vice versa. You bring design to the problem because design is a movement in itself. That process implies so many good things. You can not only make world by design, you can know the world through design because the world is made, not only given. So hence, and here, the 4 dimensions of what our lab is doing. And I love that you also used the to do design. And by the way, this is so weird, almost deja vu feeling. You have a twin sister in Latvia. I will later show you a picture. It's weird. And she's also a designer, a really good one. You should. Okay. Thanks for the host. You did this, by the way. You feel? So it's done. Anyways, what we do design sprints. And we do design sprints in relation. And that's where the relational designing to what we do in other dimensions. So all of these dimensions, what we do, are individually loaded with potentiality to deliver the results, but they are relationally connected. And we use landscape as a conceptual place where we are and what we need to do. We are not in a government, we are in a complex landscape, we need to do something in it. And what is a landscape? Landscape is a culturally loaded environment. And culture grows out not only from rituals and the geography we are, but also through artifacts. So landscape is this weird symbolic combination of what is man-made and what is given. That is landscape. And we do design sprints by annual open calls for both state and municipal institutions, and we do 10 and 15 per year. And we call that doing design sprints. That is basically the classic method from Monday to Friday, but we extend it to the innovation sprint framework because it's impossible in public administration to get 10, 15, 20 people locked in for 1 week. Bosses just say no because it's a resource. And we call that through those design sprints, we transform the landscape as an active process of doing and experiencing what design tastes and feels like. We try to keep forward the idea that if we want to work with people, we need to work with them, like literally. We don't do anything for them. We are not internally external consultancy or think tank. We are those gatherers, those loudspeakers who invite people, and then we bring people together and then understand how do we keep them together. So during the design sprints, we try to transform the landscape that is the given public administration. We do a lot of training, and I will talk to you a little later a bit more about the training. I'm already out of time, but this is important because then afterwards you will understand the pictures, I think, better. And this is the really important part, because if the design sprint and the craft of design is something there, people need to be prepared for to do so. I believe you as a facilitator you have the experience, like how do you explain people where they are gathered. So there's a work you need to do prior doing workshops, a preparation, what we call understanding the landscape. And we tend to work with language that not only said that this is about design thinking, this is about how you think design. Only do design thinking. And we call it training that is dedicated to understand the language that is being used when you apply design intelligence, and through that language you can better understand the landscape you are operating in, being this complex environment of public administration. We do it in a bit different way. Maybe it's due to the fact that I have this privilege to have worked with Tony Fry and Duncan Fairfax, that are professors that comes from distinct, quite radical design thread. And we try to focus within public administration that design is not only a domain of knowledge, how you can know the world. Design is also a historical project. So it is a practice you can make. But on top of all of it, design is an evolutionary force. Simple as that, we all are designers. Simple as it is. Blue caterpillar going through green room on top of the 6th floor in a rainy Prague. What do you wear when you are sitting behind that caterpillar? And I believe instantly you have the mental image. This is what we do. We imagine things that doesn't exist yet, and then therefore through structured process we bring them in reality. Here I can end this at the basic definition of what design is: an evolutionary force. We interlock these things. We bring in learning through workshops for civil servants that are all about different methods that connect design thinking to design doing. And we've chosen for timelining, to think in time, body storming, how we use our bodies through workshops. Thinking is not happening here. Thinking is a relationality between us and our environment. That's why you have this, you felt the vibe in that space. It was so easy to be creative there. You can explain it, why. We do a lot about storytelling. I have a close friend. She's now a consultant in Sydney, in Australia. She used to work for MindWorks, that's cognitive science lab for Greenpeace. And she told me it's scientifically proven people don't believe facts, people believe stories. So how do you tell better stories, as trendy as it is? Let me tell you a story. And at the moment we are super focused, and we can do it only now, because for 2 years we've been working our off to do this, to do this, to do this. So we have prepared the landscape, and finally we can do something about design leadership. And finally, we can work with state secretaries, deputy state secretaries, directors of institution, because they hear rumors and shadows. There's the weirdos in the lab. Employees of them have been in workshops and in trainings. So what we do, we don't talk about ourselves. We just do the work with people and let the people talk about us. Our greatest communication strategy is not to have one. And we call it cultivating the landscape. And if we bring relationally these 4 dimensions together, I strongly believe that then you can really transform a landscape or change it, because you understand the landscape, you can navigate it, you can transform it through the idea that first of all you cultivate it, you make care. So those principles and process comes together in the practice. I will show you far more pictures than it would be healthy to show you within 5 minutes, considering that this machine has its own mind at the moment. This is, I answered vaguely why we do it. Okay, I will show what we do and how we do it. So we do training that comes within these packages and modules. We do design and as for by thinking training. We train people how to facilitate workshops. We train people how do you plan, organize, and lead innovation or design sprints. And now through the new project, we also talk about service design, especially digital services. Figma is a wonderful, really, really simple thing. You can just actually work people with and talk about. Figma is amazing. We do a lot of consultation and coordination, what we call methodological support, or as normally we call it, people come to ventilate with us. We are mediators in between conflicting sides because we can facilitate a conversation through design. Wow, for 10 years we've been into this conflict, and now after just 2 hours, I think there is a solution. Damn, great things happen when you talk with people. Nothing universal, it's rather simple yet complicated. And of course, we offer this, what people are so hungry to have with us, those design sprints. We organize and lead them, we invite a neutral facilitator, and then we work with the problem owners through the open calls. Budget for one sprint is 10,000 euros plus VAT. That's basically a fee for the facilitator. We don't give money. We ask for problems and then offer, let's work on it. This is how it looks, at least, and feels like. It used to be a cafe in the basement, where rumors has it, in 2404, like 2004, the very first MTV Latvia show was showed. So back already it's loaded with innovation, like before but it's really, really important because we are insanely privileged to have our own dedicated physical space. And it is a change maker because there you can physically impose principles. Leave the domination behind the doors, leave the hierarchy behind the doors. This is where we work differently. If you don't want to do it, unfortunately, you cannot be part of it. Our first and second most fundamentally important principles is integrity and courage. And our meta frame or conceptual approach is we frame and tame the problems. And as much as people come to us, we have this abstract problem and we need that solution set. Unfortunately, this is not how design works. Like, let's talk about your problem. Those weirdos in the basement. And now I'll just go through. I will overdo for 3 minutes, sorry. I will just show you some pictures. How does it work? And I won't describe anything. I will let the pictures do the talking. We are really, really serious about that. We don't play with words, we work with language. That is our data scientist, as you can see. Ulge is amazing. He's 23. It's like, geez, the career ahead of him. That is our president. Last year, he received as a present a prototype we made in Sprint. On top of everything else, we do a lot of conferences, public international experience trip. That helps a lot. And there's one case I wanted to dig a bit deeper. The sprint I facilitated about wicked problems, those problems where there are no solutions. And it's quite a bizarre cognitive kind of test for people. We need to solve wicked problems. Yes and no. You can solve them. You can be with them. You can be in them. You can be for them. You can work with them. And at the moment, there is going to happen. We did that sprint last year, and we came up with rather. And it's always it's a blessing feeling or blessed feeling to see that in the end you worked with something really, really difficult and complex, and you worked with so many people and did all the design personas and user journey mappings, and then you started to draw how the wicked problems solution matrix would work in Latvia. And now we will go into, in this autumn and summer, we are going to test it, like post-sprint testing validation, and we came up with 4 simple steps that you need to have in place for the government to solve wicked problems. Simple as that. And now we are going to test how we filter them and what sort of process and community of practice, by the way, that's a really important name, how you put it in work. So numbers so far, and this is with this I'm going to end, and sorry for being, I'm just inspired by this environment. No, really. On top of my heart, because of course we are drowned in emails and formalities. So this sort of events are just for a couple of fresh air in such a weather. Geez. So far we've done 14 sprints as the new team and worked with 200 people. We've done working with through the training with 400 people through 7 training modules. It's like from the May of 2023 until today. So basically 2 years. We are working with 270 people that we call our public administration innovation expert network. Build a community, build a community, build a community, build a community. So 870 people so far, on average 8 hours with each of the people. There are unique people we worked with. So at the moment we have invested 7,000 of pure distilled design work into the public administration. We are in that sense similar to SITA in Finland. We invest time to work with people in order to help true people. So 7 hours of time invested at the moment, and until the end of the year, we plan to do 16 more sprints. 16 sprints are now simultaneously happening parallelly. Believe that thingy, that device is buzzing with questions. And we will have 100 people more trained. So until the end of this December, we will have worked with 1,000 people. Simple as that. 30 sprints, 30 people through Innovation Network, and 500 people trained. That is a community of practice. We don't need to do anything anymore. These people will take care of themselves. Why? Because there are those weirdos in a basement, and that is a thing I really, really recommend for you to find courage. And when there is a courage, their money will follow. Bring people in, make weird design teams, because as much as these times feels challenging and we don't have time for design, this is unique or performative expense. No, in challenging times, you need design. That's how you will solve the challenging times. And our constraint is basically turn this model that is project-based from 6 people settled to hopefully more than 6 people guaranteed from starting from the next year. I'm happy to continue this conversation. Thank you for the invitation. As always, whenever I do these things, I feel that there's so much similarities. And I think we can work from that space, that we are similar, not different. And if we are similar, if we recognize that we are similar, we can talk about it. And if we can talk about it, we can imagine something out of it. And if we can imagine something out of it, we can apply design. Simple as it is. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Let's get on to the questions. First one, before I find them online, Yanis, can you give us a few examples, one or two, of the design sprints that you've been working on, so that we have a more specific idea of the projects and topics?
Okay, I will use three, one from each year. The very first year, we worked with State Revenue Office, Bureau, Bixley Tax Administration Institution, and we worked on a plain language issue. I believe you also, when you receive an email from tax administration, whatever, first of all, and you close the computer. We are afraid of everything that's connected to the taxes. And what we came up with is basically we made up a design protocol, a model how you simplify language. And now all the people in Latvia receive from the tax office, hello, how are you? Would be cool if you would fill the form. If anything, call. Not according to the legislation principle number, etc. Blah blah blah. You have the deadline and you've lost it. You're done. So we've done it. We simplified how tax office talks with people. Last year, we had an amazing sprint with Ministry of Justice and Probation institution. I'm always also really bad with legal terms. And they wanted to come up with or test new ideas or understand how to perceive the problem that there must be something wrong with when the young troubled teenagers come in for interviews that are on the verge of becoming criminals. That they feel that it doesn't work. Yes, because the interview happened basically in that cubicle and it's interrogation. And we invited furniture, by the way, product designer who also is a service designer, graduated from Aalto University, and we explored how interior design actually could be helpful for that, something similar that you showed with immigration. And we did a concept, we tested it, we just rented IKEA furniture. Like, oh wow, really? We just need a different room where this could happen. And now on top of that concept, they opened a whole new building, built with that kind of human interaction, interior design stuff. And this year, the sprints are still ongoing. And there are actually two I really love. One is about blood donors. In Latvia, young people tend not to donate blood, and as it voluntary stuff and blah, blah, blah. So they are now working on, I wouldn't call it a new campaign, but a communication strategy, and quite possibly the new strategy for that center is going to be that no campaigns, but workshops with young people as a constant practice. Another one is a municipality, really interesting case from the very west, Liepāja, maybe some of you know, on the Baltic seashore. And the municipality wants to become the first paperless municipality in Latvia to avoid, just to get rid of anything that's paper related, all things digital. It high risk of failure, because paper is something more than just a thing. It's a material, there's symbolic value. You can fake it, by the way. You can sign it later. Those small things. And okay, let's go for another one. I think that is super interesting at the moment. We are working with Ministry of Interior Affairs things. We share borders with a rather weird neighbor. That's putting it mild. The neighbor is sick and aggressive and evil. And we are working with Interior Ministry how to bring NGOs within civic defense system. So the first responders might be the NGO. That will be really interesting. So there's no specific kind of thematic direction. What we need complex problems. And then we need to understand, okay, what sort of design do we employ and apply for that problem?
If I can ask my colleagues to erase the questions that I've already answered, that would be helpful. And the second one was, how do your participants react to the design sprints? Is it hard for them to get into a thing like that?
Yes and no. First of all, as the time goes by and the message is spreading all over the place, people come prepared. They know what is going to happen. Like, Yes, we heard that you need a problem statement, not the predefined solution. Okay, we worked on it. This is our problem. Role resolution, but still a problem. So we are happy and privileged now to have established this sort of community of practice where the people we work with come prepared. They know what's going to happen. But of course, I've done, for example, that wicked problem innovation sprint on the very first, as director of the state chancellery, sent out official emails for all the state secretaries. You must come to that workshop. Imagine 14 state secretaries in a room, the intensity in the air, like the rigidness. And I said, okay, here are Lego, build how a wicked problem looks like. Of course, many of them didn't come afterwards. One, I think, just left the room instantly. But then again, we kept the integrity, we did the job, and now we can test it. And now they are okay. I kind of want to be part of the process because we use rational methods that are science, and not only science, also arts based and backed and ground. So we know that they work because there is research beneath them. Yeah, but of course, people tend to be surprised. But then it's up to the facilitator. If you skip the focus on method, but focus on conversation, ask the right questions, method is just a tool. Don't judge it, don't challenge it. Okay, you can challenge it. I wouldn't go trust the process, but if you feel that people are against the method, don't talk about the method. You can always ask, where do you think the problem comes from? Okay, let's not imagine how does it look like. What's your personal experience? And then you can bring dialogue method from Finland. Okay, let's talk about your personal experience. What you and so many ways to open up difficult conversation with ease. So I think I strongly believe that there is a matter why we all love to be in the kitchen and to talk about stuff. It's about kitchen and conversation.
The next question is about how the bureaucratic system accommodates your brave and alien approaches. Or to rephrase it, if Shimon here would be to head a unit like yours starting tomorrow morning, what would be the do's and don'ts of communicating with the rest of the system so that he doesn't fail?
Okay, threefold answer. First one, we are both limited and constrained and yet freed in a sense that we have a budget from European funded projects. So yeah, whenever someone says what you are doing, we are following the orders. How do we do them? That's our case. So we are kind of defended, guarded by that. That is also limiting us. The second is quote to the Malcolm Beatty, ex-head of the Innovation Lab in Northern Ireland. You need to have data in order to work in an issue. So you need to have understanding that both it comes from quantitative, quality research, etc. You need to know your literature. So you need to have expertise in the field. You need to have a sponsor. Absolutely. As much as I was against this idea that you need someone who supports you, of course, at the moment, yeah, we have the support of Prime Minister's office. We have support of State Chancellor's director because we have proven that those weirdos in the basement actually deliver something. And the third thing, what I would suggest, what to do if you would be willing to have your own design team, is to have a workshop about it. Invite people in a room and ask questions. Hey, what do you think? Where do we start from? And if you will ask the right questions, you will see how many of people you work with for 5 or 10 years actually have unique other skill sets. You need to map the landscape to understand it, and then you can fill in where it's needed. As an used to be external consultant, I'm now a huge believer that the only way how to do a proper innovation in public administration is to do it from the within, to do it from the people you already work with, because those people are the greatest experts in the field. Okay, from time to time, you need the neutrality from the outside, being that facilitator who can say to State Secretary, no, stop. No other deputy or head of the unit will ever raise a voice. And that's something what we've risked with. For example, when we worked with another sprint in the first year, I told the team yesterday about the cadastre, how you measure the land value, we understood that, okay, there's actually huge conflict embedded in it, and we didn't invite facilitator, we invited mediator. And the very first thing that gone viral through the government in Latvia, that weird new team exploded a conflict and invited mediator. What F is happening? And we kept the fight and we won it. Therefore, we proved that all you need to have in place is integrity and courage and responsibility, not only freedom to ask the right questions and then to stick with what are the answers from the people you worked with. You cannot imagine solution. You can make it with the people.
Thank you. It's okay. I think 2 last questions, if I didn't miss anything. How did you? Was it? No.
That was body, strong body language.
No, that was something different. We were trying to design the questions so that they disappear after being answered, but we can't figure it out. It's okay. Well, how do you choose the teams or projects you work with? And are those teams or participants able to convey the principles of the design, or are they able to continue working in a similar way after they leave your design sprint?
Really good question. First of all, we do open calls from design sprints that they send in presentations. Then we do a live sessions where they present them. So normally each year we have 30 applications for sprints and we use 6. So many of them stay behind the doors or whatnot. Then we instantly offer all the possible training for them. So we try to keep them in. When we choose sprints we will be doing with the teams, we start to prepare the teams. We work with them, we train them, we invite them, we basically keep them on board. It's a constant and consistent work of relational designing where you just try to keep proper humane relationships in the place. We teach them, we train them. And then we hope, and now at the moment, the last thing, 2 new innovation labs are popping up in different institutions because some employees from the institution came to the sprints, did something, went with us to the field trips. Their directors visited during workshops, and now we are building other 2 labs in public administration. Weirdly enough, they don't come from ministries; they come from what we call Padotības iestāde. Here's the Latvian for you. Institution that serves the purpose on specific goal for ministry. One is a nature conservation agency that will have innovation lab. Another is state digital services agency. Weird, and I think for Latvia, rather amazing contextual combination, conservation of the nature and digital services that will have the first digital, not digital, but design teams. Yeah.
Many thanks.
Many thanks. Good host.
Oh, thank you. Many thanks for being here with us. What happens next is a coffee break, but we need to start the next block at 11:15 sharp. So you'll see some very strong body language during drinking your coffee. So please go drink it quickly so that we can push you back here in about 25 minutes. Thank you very much. Now, this is the body language I've been speaking about. One more try. Good. The echo is still here with us. Olli-Pekka, can you please give us a second while we cope with our echo in the room? And the echo is gone. Now, time for body language is over. This is just my language now, pushing you back from the coffee break. Don't worry, come forward. Come forward, sit down, don't be afraid. So, no, it is still here with us. So if it's still here with us, I hope it won't disturb us much. Please welcome to the second part of the day. We'll talk about the key aspects of modern leadership in public service, and I'm very happy to welcome Olli-Pekka Heinonen, who's heading the International Baccalaureate, and he's a former public servant, a politician. And I'm also very happy to welcome Ingrid Stegmanova, who's starting what is it? It's a state secretary. Thank you. Thank you. We decided to help each other. Language-wise as well. State secretary at the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs. This block might be a bit confusing for some of you. I hope it won't. It's just confusing for me. We have 4 topics ahead of us. And Olli-Pekka will give us either a presentation or 4 parts of it. It's up to you. And then Ingrid will share her remarks on the subject. And after this conversation, you can ask questions. Please feel free to ask them in Slido again. And I'll choose, as a self-appointed director of the block, to either ask those questions in one of those topics or at the end of it. We have 20 minutes for each topic. The first will be humble leadership and how to build trust. Second will be about cooperation, how to get things done if people have different views and opinions. The third, top-down driven change and local-level innovations. And the fourth is capacity building management model. So these will be the four subtopics we'll be talking about. And if I may, Olli-Pekka, the introduction, keynote, or the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be able to join you all. I was really impressed by you all coming together with the theme of social innovations. I think that's what our societies are definitely needing. So happy to share my experience over about 30 years in different positions, especially in the society of Finland. I will start sharing my views first about the question of humble leadership and the question how to create trust. And humble leadership is a term that is used sometimes also as a synonym to terms like service leadership or positive leadership. And these are the 4 topics that I will be covering, but I will be actually coming or stopping after each topic to have the discussion and the comment by Ingrid to be given. So going to the next slide. One thing when talking about humble leadership, that it's about self-awareness. It is about you and each leader understanding that where you are situated, what is the location you are in, what is the character of challenges that you're dealing with. And I've been so many times in a situation in that room in the picture where different civil servants have come together and started to solving a problem and identified the problem and then identified the solution and then started talking about the route from A to B. And at the same time, the reality outside the box is entirely different. And it's as we're working with public service, most of our challenges are connected to people. People ourselves, but of course, mostly the citizens and their life circumstances. And when we are talking about human beings, we are talking about an adaptive system. There is something new always emerging with humans. That's called human growth. We grow, we develop, and that means that the systems change constantly. So we need to understand that working with that kind of questions cannot be solved from the outside of that system. But you need to engage with the system to first of all understand the quality of the challenges ahead. And then actually quite often there is no one right answer to that kind of challenges. But you need to be humble in front of the complexity of the systems. And you need to be open to new type of solutions and listening to different views in that system. Going to the next slide. This is a picture that has been created by Professor Toby Lowe, with whom I've had the pleasure of working together for many years. And the most important thing with working with human learning systems is to understand the system. And as I said, you cannot understand the system if you try to stay outside it, but you need to engage with it. You need to learn from it constantly. And the thing that enable to get that kind of a system to a better position, you need to make the system visible. You need to understand that who are the different actors that are contributing to the system, and also make those actors understand that they are part of the system, and then start to also create that relationship between those different actors and create the trust between them. Only if they know what's the role of others in the system, you can start building the trust. And the building of trust is something that it's a challenging task. And again, we come back to the humble leadership. If you have your own views that you are driving in the system, I can be pretty sure that the system will not come up with a trustful atmosphere. So you need to hold back your own ideas first and to create a process that is something that everybody trusts. It's like in a hostage situation. The most important rule for people who are negotiators in hostage situation is that you have to create a process that the kidnappers trust. That's the only way forward. And you have to act in a way that you never break that process. It must be followed to the last point. And it's the same time with everything that you build trust on. And after you have been capable of building trust in the system, then there's the possibility to establish the shared purpose. For example, in the area of education where I'm working right now, quite often I see the situation that in the education system, there are many different assumptions and views on purpose. And if there are different views, what is a school for? How can there be kind of common solutions how to make the system better? So you have to bring the main actors together and for them together to see that what are the things on the purpose that they can align on. And that is the most important thing actually in making the system function better. Going to the next slide, again, positioning yourself as a decision maker or a civil servant preparing matters for the political decision makers, you have to think that what is the quality of the challenge that you're faced with? Is it a simple one that it's a kind of a technical rationality that enables you to solve it? Or is it one that there's a lot of certainty what will happen, but there's a lot of disagreement when you could try to find a solution through finding a compromise and finding coalitions among different actors? Or is it a complicated in the sense that there's a lot of kind of unity about the question, but we have very little visibility that what will happen next, a lot of uncertainty, when actually quite often you are in the space of ideological governance. I would say that most often governments and ministries in today's situation are dealing with problems that are complex. And again, we come to the question that there is no right or wrong solutions, no kind of somebody who could say that that's the only right solutions. But there are different possibilities to go forward, and you need to engage with all the actors to find that what would work in that situation. Now I've used my first 10 minutes and I'll hand the word over to you.
So, hello everybody. My position as State Secretary in the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs doesn't mean so much opportunities to speak English, but I do my best for you today, because we can't use the translation because Olli-Pekka is online. Hi, Olli. I would like to just comment what Olli-Pekka said and let you just know in which situation we are at the moment in our organization. So in the ministry, we are building a community of managers across all management levels and also across all departments. And why we do it? Because we would like to make a better condition for communication, cooperation, and mutual support. And we do it because we knew that the complexity of interactions, which Olli-Pekka had nicely explained, doesn't work so much with the hierarchy. So it much better works with some networks, and we have to build this kind of condition in our organization, because this is something what can help us to make the same condition with stakeholders and to deliver better services to our citizens. And just briefly explain some key principles which are important with this making conditions and what we have to solve and doesn't work so excellent in the moment. So the first is from control to support. The second is from one-off change to gradual and continuous change. The third is from firefighting to strategic work, from external to internal motivation, from focus on individuals to building strong teams, from advocacy to mutual dialogue and collaboration, and from focus on structure, more focus on the culture. And this all can bring us from rigidity to ability better. So I was talking about what we have to do now. We have to create condition for change of the culture in our organization based on personal meetings, shared learning, and co-creating process way forward. And for this kind of concept, we have to have two main assumptions for success, and it is trust and psychological safety, which is something what I have heard you have talked about in the morning. And for us, it's also very important. And this is a project supported from European Social Fund, dedicated especially for social innovation. And now, so far, we are almost 2 years on the way with the project, and we would like to continue all this process also after the project is finished. And I can go more deeply later on.
Thank you very much, both of you. Just for the audience here, you can ask your questions through Slido. If you ask them in Czech language, I'll translate as you're asking Ingrid. If you ask in English, which you've done most of the morning, that would probably mean you're asking Olli. If the question is in Czech, is answered in Czech, I'll shortly briefly summarize what we've said so that Olli is here with us. We'll get to most of your questions after the block, because the time is pushing us. So I'm sending the mic back to Olli-Pekka for the second topic, that is cooperation.
Thank you very much. And I will continue with the question of cooperation, how to get things done if people have different views. And going to the next slide, I think that here we come to the question of us understanding that we all look at the world with our professional lenses. We have a history, we have a background, we have an education, and that enables us to be experts on something. The thing is that expertise, it sheds a light on those things that we are experts on. The challenge is that with light there is also a shadow. Because our expertise, we see certain things very well, and there are other things that we don't see at all. And exactly like in this picture, we are kind of those people with white coats looking from our own perspective and experience what we might be dealing with. And I think the picture illustrates well the fact that as long as we think that we as individuals have the right answer, we don't get the whole picture. So taking the cover out from our eyes and starting to collaborate together is central to doing a good job. I would say that the idea that people disagree and that there are conflicts between different views is a necessity. That needs to happen. That conflict needs to be there. And actually, I see that conflict and our ability to cope with different views is something that is needed for us to be capable of truly collaborating. Because if people don't dare to say what they believe, then there isn't trust in the system. In my leadership team, for example, in today's world, we've taken into use a system of 3 cards, that when there are topics that are discussed at the end, we always show our cards. And the cards are green card, yellow card, and red card. Green card means that you are aligned with the proposal. Yellow shows that you have some doubts, but if these are cleared out, you're fine. And red one shows that you're against. Why we are using these cards? So that we can surface the disagreements and the different views, because they are valuable. They bring something new. They are like one of the experts in that picture that enables us to see the whole larger picture. Our brain works in a way that we see what we expect to see. The newest brain research tells us that the brains are like predictive machine. They anticipate all the time what will happen next. And that is kind of caused by our earlier experiences. So for us to see the shadows, we need each other. And for that reason, the disagreements are important. And then it comes to the question that in a system, for example, how are we capable of kind of agreeing and coming to a conclusion with those different views? And there comes into the position the role of a system convener, sometimes called an orchestrator or sometimes called a gardener. That's the person or a body or a team whose responsibility is to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. and who is also responsible of bringing the different actors together, enabling the discussion and making sure that the process goes forward. It can be the leader, the manager that takes that kind of a role, but it can also be somebody else. In public sector, quite often that kind of a role is not truly understood, that there isn't anybody taking that kind of a role. But I see and see also very good models in different parts of the world where that kind of a model is also implemented very successfully. And going to the next slide, here is the kind of thing that needs to be understood, that in a hierarchy, people tend to think similarly, at least what they say, than their manager. But in a network, it works exactly the opposite way. In a network, people tend to make sure that they tell where they disagree, where they have a different view, where their perspective is unique compared to the others. And that requires an entirely different way of working. As Ingrid very wisely said, that if we emphasize hierarchy, we kill creativity. Because with hierarchy, you have the fear element. There is somebody who has power over you, can decide things affecting your future. So if you want creative teams and organizations, don't emphasize hierarchy, but emphasize your willingness to be open and value others and value different views, and also admit that you don't know, you don't have the right answers, but you're ready to put your ego aside and hear the good views from others. I will stop again here and hand it over back to you.
So thank you, Olli-Pekka, for introducing these topics, because it's something what we used to in our ministry is mainly working in hierarchy. And this is what we would like to change in the community of managers. We work in a small teams, and the small teams are like with the all management levels, and also spread out for some departments and sections. And we try to solve three basic themes or issues, topics. It's me as a leader at first, then how to build a harmonious ministry, and then working with stakeholders on the same principles. And now we have about 50 managers involved in this program, and it is about 1/3 of all of managers in our organizations. And what I think is the main important is the method of working. It's experimental learning. Then the small groups are solving real problem from their practice. And then what I think is really important is that we create a common mindset about these topics and values around it. And I think it helps us a lot working with different views and perspective of the people, because we need our mission, our values, which we can go follow them. And this is a situation what I would like to ask Olli-Pekka, how you have dealt with working in hierarchy in the Ministry of Education, how it was that time for you. It was easy, or how you dealt with this issue in the ministry? If I can ask now.
I hope that in the future, 3 times, so that's a sign of change. Can you say something more? We still don't hear. So we will try. Give us a few seconds, I hope. Oh, but you be on mute.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? You can? Very good. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Ingrid, for the good question. I think first of all, it's very important that you allow and you enable processes that that kind of bring people to from bottom up to express their views, so that you, like, for example, what I've used in many different organizations is the model of creating change agents that are bringing people together who are willing to change the earlier ways of working and contribute to finding new and better ways. And that's something that, of course, and that's very strongly connected to the culture change. And it's something that what a leader in that kind of a situation can do is really to give shelter to that kind of people. Because when people in the hierarchy kind of from bottom up are starting to implement new ideas, they quite often step on somebody's toes. And when that happens, if they get very strong negative feedback because of that, they'll never do it again. So making it very clear in the organization that they have the right to pilot and experiment new things, and that the leadership, and I've also did it so that when I was the state secretary in the Prime Minister's office, we agreed with all the permanent secretaries that we give shelter for that kind of bottom-up initiatives, so that everybody knows in our organizations that it is allowed to create and find new innovative solutions.
Mention one of them. Do you have other tools to build what's called psychological safety? Meaning, how can people you might, again, in a few years, emerge as a leader of an organization that is somehow engulfed in a culture of fear. People are afraid to speak up. What are other ways to build space safe enough for people to actually be not to be afraid of to speak up and then to innovate?
Changing that kind of a culture where there is fear takes a lot of time, because it means that people have learned by their own experience that it's not a good thing to say things aloud. So it is up also to the question that how do we change the people who have created the fear? How to make them understand that they cannot act the way they have acted. And it might be sometimes that some of that kind of people cannot continue in their positions if they are not willing to change. There might be also some people who are doing that, who are acting like that because they want to deliver their objectives. They want to be very efficient on the challenges that they have on their responsibility. And they do it by being very authoritative in their management style. The question then is that, is it allowed to reach the objective by any means? Or should you have objectives in the organizations that are about the how piece? That what is the allowed behavior? And like, again, in my previous organizations and the current organizations, we have three types of objectives. We have shared objectives, which everybody shares. Then we have individual objectives on the task. And then we have objectives on the behavior. And these are equally weighted, all of these three. And that's a pretty effective way, especially for that kind of people who are very target driven, to change their behavior.
We agree. It's official now. We do agree. You can keep the mic on. The next topic is top-down driven change versus local level innovations.
Yes, thank you. Going to the next slide. I think we need to also understand ourselves that what is the main capacity of an organization. Quite often I see public organizations and also ministries that they think that their role is to create the right solutions, and then it's their supply capacity delivering them to the citizens that counts. I don't believe that is true, because I believe that the main capacity of a public organization is the interaction capacity. That what is our capability together with the customers to create good outcomes. And customers, I'd rather use citizens as a term there. I think sometimes in public policy and definitely in political decision making, there's the idea that when you get a decision done, then that's the hard part and your job is done. I have seen that making a decision is about maybe 10 to 50% of creating change. And the rest is about the interaction capacity, truly making change. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that quite often this is what happens in reality. This is an graph by Professor Six about the dynamics of mistrust in public service. We quite often see that there's a scandal somewhere in the system, in a school, in a hospital, whatever it is. And then there's an uproar, the media, social media, citizens saying that this can never happen again. And politicians, leading civil servants are asked to take action. And the pressure is so hard that they are making action and they are creating more control mechanisms so that that kind of a situation will never happen again. What does it mean in practice? It means that that school or that hospital will use more of its time to write reports back on that control. And there is less time for their core tasks. And that means that actually they will be doing a worse job in their accountability in the future. And the same thing is connected to the resources, that when there is this kind of a scandal, it means that there is less trust to allocate resources to that unit. And again, that means that they have the less ability to do their core job well. And the problem with this is it might be that there is a true wrongdoing and there's a need for more control. That might happen. But what we are seeing more often is that actually nobody has had time to really see that why the things happened that happened. Because the pressure to act with control is so strong that it overrides the ability to have the dialogue, to understand that what created really the thing that happened. Going to the next slide, and you can tap 3 times here. One more, thank you. I think there are 3 ways of making change, and there are moments when each of them might be needed. There is authority, which is the one that you use in hierarchy. The problem with authority is that you need to have pretty strong sanctions for it to function. And it's also, of course, a top-down model where the management holds the knowledge and the others don't. They don't learn from that kind of a situation. And the problem is that when the change is pushed top-down, it seldom holds if the people who is driving it moves away. So it's kind of externally motivated change, but no internal commitment. Reason is a similar one, that we tell people how they need to act. Those people who think similarly as the leadership does are probably aligned, but those that have different views don't comply. And again, it doesn't create sustainable change. So the sustainable way of making change is something that Ingrid already referred to. It's experiential learning. You creating situations where people learn by their own experiment and experience that their worldview and the reality, there's a disconnect there. And through that, there you create the internal motivation for change, which is the sustainable way of making change. And that is something that lasts, although there might be changes in persons, but still there's strong commitment to drive change forward. So I'll stop here.
And it was also one of the main principles I have mentioned at the beginning, from external to internal motivation. And I personally believe that creating functional teams and networks with an excellent interaction capability is the main condition for good public service. But at first, for my opinion, we have to be able to communicate and cooperate effectively inside the organization. We have to know first how it works and how big challenge and how big challenge it can bring, and then we can spread the principle easily to the cooperation with our stakeholders. So it's kind of very important part of the learning by practice, like we just mentioned.
Thank you very much, both. I'll expand on this shortly in Czech, and then I'll summarize for you, Olli-Pekka. Jeden dotaz navazuje na to, co teď zmiňovala. Jaké nástroje?
That was a question that you just mentioned. What tools do we have at our disposal in public service? In hierarchy, when people are used to external motivation, what can we actually do to strengthen what you just spoke about?
Je mi slyšet? Jo. Nic jednoduchého.
It is nothing easy, nothing simple. We are trying this in our manager community that I've been mentioning, and it's definitely a long-lasting effort. I also mentioned a shared vision, shared values, the fact that we are trying to build up a network of managers where we can discuss things together and where we can set new rules and principles. And I need to say that the 50 managers, and some of them are even present here in the room with us, they can all feel the change, even now as we speak. But what we miss so far is a bigger outreach. So right now we are entering a stage of a program that will be much more difficult because it's a voluntary program. So we have 50 volunteers, if you may, and now we are still missing some more because there's 170 people in total.
It is a long-term goal, but the ministry has been building a community of managers. So the network and the community is part of the solution. It's now 50 people out of 170. It's a voluntarily commitment to join the community. And so sharing the experience of managers within the ministry is an important tool or way to achieve it. And the next one that Ingrid mentioned is a shared vision that that the leadership can instill even through the community of practice into the whole organization. There's one question I think we can ask that one to Olli-Pekka. I think it goes back a bit to one of the previous things that you mentioned, and that is the complex world. We have, for quite some time, we've been used to see problems as linear, as something that we can unlock and then move on. But you mentioned that the world gets more and more complex, and it is difficult to redesign our thinking around problems. So how can we support the understanding of the complex world and the need to change our approach to solving problems? Is there any recommended ways, tools, or tips?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult actually for us, like myself, who are a bit older, to understand the complexity of the world than it is for the young generations. Young generations intuitively understand the overlapping nature of different things, and they understand quite naturally also the idea of co-creation. That there are studies done on that question, and their ability to really understand complexity is on a high level. And I would say that the question that how to understand better complexity is that it's not that the understanding is not the most important part, that you need to kind of sense complexity. You need to sense it being in a complex system. That because understanding also might be a bit of a thing that you're outside of the system again, and you're like an engineer, you understand the machine, and then you are kind of fixing the machine. But we are all in the situation that the way we act change that complex system. It has an impact on it. It has an impact how it functions. So we cannot take ourselves outside of the system, but we need to see ourselves as part of the system. And again, we come back to the humble world, that it is something that we need to see that the idea of being a leader who scans the situation and makes the right analysis and makes decisions and saves the world and rides down to the sunset, it doesn't work with complex system. The question is that what is then the role of a manager and a leader in this kind of a system? I would say that the role is to sense where there are the soft spots in the system that would allow us to go forward. It's like sensing the half-cooked decisions that are inside the organization already, and using the energy that there is in the organization, not like a manager or a leader pushing down his or her own will, which is very, very challenging, but using the energy that already exists in the organization and being capable of, in all the noise, to see the patterns of the half-cooked decisions that are very close to becoming reality, and then making those calls.
Thank you very much. Without a specific cue, please sum up with the last topic that's in front of us, that is capacity building management model versus the management by performance model. and then we'll get all your questions at once at the end of the session.
Thank you very much. I think a lot has already been said. Going to the next slide, I'm going to shortly say something and come back again to the model of the human learning system, that in a ministry, a ministry itself is a system, and then it belongs to another system of other ministries and other agencies, and then beneath the ministry there are also other systems that again together create a larger system. And the question is that how do you create that kind of learning cycles and learning loops from the different layers of the organization so that it all works to the same direction? And really that's in the core of having learning as a kind of a main objective of the system. We are in a world where there is so much change that in a year's time, if we set kind of content targets for an organization, it might be that at the end of the year, those targets don't make any sense anymore because of the complexity and the kind of fluctuations coming from outside the system to impact the agenda all the time. So what comes important is a ministry's or a public organization's ability to learn. And I would say that that should be the main objective of an organization in the future, that through what it has experienced, that what has it learned of solving a big challenge, for example. How is it better in the future? And it cannot be better in the future if it doesn't have those learning loops that enable it to be aware of the larger systems that exist. And going to the next slide, I would say that here is really kind of crystallized what does it take for an organization to be really a kind of a learning system. These are done by my friend Ray Eisen, who is the president of the International Federation of Systems Research. And it means that you need to understand that the social world is complex. You need to focus on relationships. It's not what an individual person, team, or an organization does. It's the question of the quality of the interaction. Everything important happens there. And then it's really investing in the overlapping portfolios for experimentation, piloting, prototyping, different ways, rather than creating heavy siloed multi-year projects. It is about enhancing the capacity for innovation and learning rather than scaling solutions. With wicked problems, you cannot scale solutions because they are always unique. It's not the same that applies. It's also very strongly context dependent. So once created solutions don't fly over to other contexts. And then it's about enabling better outcomes rather than specifying activities and outputs, which so often we concentrate on. And learning should be used as a way to contribute to a sustained and embedded change that becomes part of the culture of the organization. And then the leaders should be strong enough to put their own ego aside and also do it in an organizational level to see that is there certain things that we would need to change so that together we could reach something more valuable. And then, like through the change agents, and there are other ways of doing it also, to make room for the emergence of new patterns. Live with the change. It's like with schools, for example, quite often schools try to keep the change outside. When we are talking about when the AI boom started, so many schools and organizations and national systems say that we need to ban this. No to school, it's dangerous. Or the same thing when we started noticing the well-being challenges of students, that there was an approach saying that let the teachers just teach. Somebody else has to take care of the well-being of the students. That won't work. That relationship that the students are having to artificial intelligence or to the challenges of their well-being, schools need to have that relationship to those phenomena also. So you need to live with the changing world, not to try to keep it outside. And I rest my case here.
So I would like to add just, I feel that we have a lot of energy in our ministry. We can work with this, that cook from it. So it's something what I am proud of it. And I'm also proud of the possibility of cooperate on this project with Markéta Pichoučková from our ministry and Richard Kokeš from GovLab. Please stand up. Please stand up. Thank you so much for the support. And just to hold the issue, the capacity building and performance management. So this is the question we have right now. What is it, our added value, and what, like, how to show what we exactly we do? We have, we do a lot of great things, but I don't know if you know it. So how to show, and what are the key performance indicators in the public sector and state administration? I really liked what Olli-Pekka said, that they have 3 objectives shared for all individual tasks, and then on the behavior. So we are just finding now what for us are the key performance indicators. And we just started to consider to operate with management oriented on a mission and trying to change a bit from the operational to more strategic work. And for us also at the moment it's very important work with mistakes, which presumes more trust and psychological safety. Again, back to the conditions I mentioned at the beginning. And what is maybe the most important is in this field is more time for reflection. We don't have or doesn't want to find the time for reflection, even the reflection of our interventions as a good part of good service. And last but not least, for me, is open mind approach. We need it. Like Olli-Pekka, you said it earlier in one podcast I liked, and might is like an umbrella. It works better when open.
Thank you both very much. I think this is when we hop into the Q&A. We have about 20 minutes. So if you have questions, now is the time to type them in. The first one will be, again in Czech, and I'll be happy to sum it up. It's about I can ask in English and then Ingrid can reply in Czech. How successful is the smashing of hierarchy among the public servants in your ministry, and how would they perceive your actions in this way? Jak úspěšné je vnímané rozbíjení hierarchie mezi úředníky samotnými?
Jestli mohu mluvit česky a vy to pak přeložíte.
I will be glad to speak Czech. Okay, can I hear the question again? It is about smashing the hierarchy and its success. Okay. At the beginning, we were afraid that this might be seen as an elite group, that we do not know much about, and people would feel isolated from it. This is linked with communication across our departments, and I hope that we now have managed to let people know that this is not an elite group, not an isolated group. Of course, it was difficult to explain this to people, but what works best is simply sharing things directly with people, letting them try for themselves, because then they have the direct experience. And we also try to look at what to do next. At our ministry, we have workshops and we invite people who haven't yet participated in this management community so that they have the opportunity to participate. I think that we have provoked debate. Some people joined us because they were simply curious to know what was happening. And so far we have had positive feedback. Of course, we also hear questions about, do you really believe in this? Do you think that this is possible? And whenever we get asked these questions, we repeat that, yes, it is possible.
At the beginning, there were fears that we are creating an elite group of managers, and people asked if they really belonged. So it was a matter of communications. We need to explain that it's a bit of a bottom-up change and that everybody can join and try themselves, because the experience of the network is unique and you can't just explain it without joining. And so the perception gradually changes. Now people ask us, and we ask ourselves, how do we go on when we come back from the community of practice back into the practice itself? And we did raise a lot of curiosity within the institution. I hope our translators are not too nervous about my translation here, so you can take your ears off. Don't listen when I'm trying to do your job. Sorry. There's the next question might be to you, Olli-Pekka. There's probably some evaluators, professionals here in the room. So they're asking, how do you evaluate your actions? I think the things that you mentioned were quite soft and hard to evaluate. So probably someone is trying to stick us, kind of pin us to our words, and they're asking, how do you evaluate the probably the change that you've been talking about in your presentation. Is there something like that?
Yeah, I think there are different ways of evaluating it. One thing is, of course, that when you're asking, for example, the personnel that how they are feeling about the culture of the organization, what do they answer when you're asking really the questions about trust and psychological safety, how do they relate to that kind of questions? So that's one part of it. Then there is one part where is about outcomes, that how does the organization how does the organization's ability to deliver and interact with others, how does that develop is another one. And again, in my current organization, for example, I see a huge change in the ability to make sustainable change when people feel that they have accountability. They can use their expertise for the full potential, and that they have the right to innovate and share their views, even in a situation that it might be against of something that has been earlier a kind of a shared truth. So I would say that those are very valuable ways of evaluating it, and that kind of takes me to the question of that how to see leadership more generally. What is it really? And to me, leadership is not a role. Leadership is a quality of the organization, which in the best possible situation is spread widely in the organization. And it is shown in the way that the organization takes responsibility and accountability together. And that comes also to the other basic question, that what is an organization for? We quite often, when we think about it, the first thing that comes to mind is that there are boxes on top of each other. That's not what organization is for. Organization is for to enable the collaboration between different members of the staff in that organization, for them to do their best to reach the goals of the organization. To enable collaboration. That's the main reason to have an organization. And that's when making organizational changes, that is something that needs to be kept in mind.
And I will take the liberty to expand it. The question goes, hierarchy is definitely embedded in public organizations. Is there a way to change that? And my follow-up would be, have you ever implemented the principles of mission-driven civil service, or the mission command, where you keep the hierarchy, but you don't expect everybody just to follow orders, but to imagine what the orders would be based on the common mission or the common goal, and then take initiative without waiting for instructions every morning. So how do you overcome the embedded principle of hierarchy of modern state organizations? And is the mission-driven principles or mission command one of those ways?
Yeah, I think there are kind of scale that what is the thing you emphasize in the picture that I showed, where one of the three elements was to the shared purpose. I see that kind of a way of coming together on the mission, but that the mission is created also together, so that the actors come together to align what that mission or purpose or kind of direction where you want to be heading towards, what it is. And then after that, there's a lot of freedom. And then there's kind of there are kind of two, how would I say, guardrails that are limiting. There are the places where you cannot go for legislation reasons or other reasons, and then that you also somehow determined where you don't want to go. And after that you have given those guardrails, then there is space, a lot of space for innovation, and I think there should be. Again, that moving to that kind of culture from hierarchical culture takes quite a lot of effort and time, because people who have been in a hierarchy for a long time, they have gotten used to a situation where they are comfortable with somebody on top of them telling what they should do. And they kind of, that's fine with them. And if somebody comes to that kind of a person, says that now you have the freedom to think yourself, that might be a scary situation. And that must be understood, that kind of growing out of that kind of a mindset, it's not an easy process. It's a deep change that goes to the identity of that person. And that person needs a lot of support and kind of safeguarding also for that change to happen.
Trying to rephrase a bit the next question. It's about experts and leaders or managers in the civil service, because the Czech public sector promotes the best experts, not always best managers. The way to management is you are a very good expert at what you do, and we want to give you some, a bit more money and a bit of more recognition. So we make you manager, sometimes even without you wanting to. Can someone be a great leader without being just while being just an average expert? I assume they can. And how do we make that happen in organizations that are where career paths are mostly revolving around you being an expert and then just moving up?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and happens in so many organizations, maybe more typically with public organizations and NGOs. I think the most important element is to make the change, to understand that the main identity for a manager and a leader is to be a leader, that is the profession. And that is a profession that in a similar way that you can develop yourself being an expert, you need and you have to develop yourself as a leader. You have to create your leader identity. And of course, then there's the question that what is the leadership culture that an organization wants to have? And then that how you make sure that all the leaders have the capacity they are capable of. They have a kind of a possibility that there's a possibility for them. They have the accountability, and they are also motivated to lead. And it's a big question that what is then the leader's relationship with the content or the expertise, the areas of expertise. And I somehow like the way that it's possible to say on English that that the leader should be capable of being on top of the items, but he or she doesn't have to go in the items. So you need to understand the substance, but it is not something that you need always to go inside the substance and be a high expert there to be capable of being a leader.
It sounded like quite a big task. It didn't sound easy. So the next question might be a bit counterintuitive here, because what you just said sounded to me like, becoming a 21st century leader in a civil organization or public organization is not something very easy. A question in Czech for Ingrid is how she plans to inspire other managers to join the community of practice if they haven't done so before. And you can answer in Czech, of course. Jak plánujete pro manažerskou komunitu nadchnout i ostatní vedoucí nebo ředitele, kteří se dosud nepřihlásili?
Jak jsem říkala, že je to dobrovolné, tak určitě ne tím, že se to stane jako befelem. To by nefungovalo za mě. Je spousta z těch 50 členů té manažerské komunity, kteří alespoň nevysloveně, ale cítím to tak, že by mohli být nějakými ambasadory, což se projevilo už teď, že za každý běh teďka, který máme, tak to jsme se ještě nepochlubili, že jsme získali úřednický čin roku za podporu týmové spolupráce právě za manažerskou komunitu. A každou tu komunitu tam byl jeden ten účastník. Vrchní ředitel, vedoucí oddělení, a za mě to jsou jako nejlepší ambasadoři té manažerské komunity uvnitř toho úřadu. A věřím tomu, že jich bude daleko více, těch ambasadorů, a že budou sdílet tu dobrou praxi vlastně se svými kolegyněmi, kolegy. A to je za mě jakoby ta cesta, jak šířit a pozvat další účastníky do manažerské komunity. A plus za mě, když budou vidět nějaké výsledky, to znamená něco, co potom přinesou absolventi nebo účastníci té manažerské komunity do své praxe, ale my to nevnímáme jako jednorázovou záležitost. My se už teďka chystáme právě s Markétou na to, až projekt skončí, jak vlastně si to prostě zajistíme sami, aby ta komunita dál pokračovala, aby se stala standardem, aby z toho vznikl nějaký systémový prvek v tom úřadu jako takovém. Takže až se mě zeptáte za 10 let, tak už to bude u nás jako dobrý a všichni budou součástí manažerské komunity, myslím tím všechny představené. Takže ambasadoři, myslím, no, že je ta cesta.
Děkuju. It only works when it's voluntary, so we won't push people to join. We rely on ambassadors, people who are already within the community of practice, and they share their experience with others and their colleagues. We've received a civil service award last month for the project, so I hope this will also help us share the message. And of course, for many people, when they see the results of what we're trying to do, then they might be more eager to join. We hope that we'll be able to continue the project for over a longer period of time, and I hope that in 10 years' time you'll see all the managers within the community of practice. I would like to join someone from the audience saying that it would be nice to create a case study out of what you're doing, or other ministries and institutions in the country to get some inspiration. And the last question here is for Ingrid again, and you can answer in Czech, but it's in English. How do you verify that working with mistake, or the culture of accepting error is being done across the whole ministry?
Do celého ministerstva, jak pracovat s chybou, chápu to správně? No, za mě jedině skrze tu zkušenost, kterou řešíme v manažerské komunitě a kterou ti, kteří se toho účastní, přenášejí nebo snaží se přenášet do těch svých týmů. To je jedna cesta a práce s chybou za mě v rámci celého ministerstva je hodně navázaná na důvěru, na to, jestli se nám, a teď stojíme všichni, nejenom u nás na ministerstvu, před případnou změnou toho vedení a chystáme se na to tak, že se snažíme připravit novému vedení takové prostředí, které nám umožní hned od začátku možná vytvořit to prostředí trochu bezpečnější, ale je to experiment, protože jsme si tady říkali, že práce prostřednictvím experimentu je to, co teda se snažíme dělat, prototypování, experimentování, tak i tohle předání úřadu, nějaké kultivované, je za mě nějaký experiment, který se buď to povede, anebo méně povede, ale bude to nějaká zkušenost. Takže skrze to prostředí důvěry a skrze malé týmy, ve kterých se práce s chybou dá uchopit dobře.
Thank you. The community of practice is sharing their approach with their teams. We're trying to build trust because the elections are coming up later this year. So we're trying to build an environment for the new leadership to follow up with us on the work we've achieved so far. But it's also, we need to stress that it's an experiment, and if we want to work with a mistake, we need to be ready to fail ourselves, which might sound like a dim, but it's a very optimistic message, because if you are ready to fail, chances are you'll learn from that, get up again, and get the work done yourself. Olli-Pekka and Ingrid, thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure. And Olli-Pekka, I think you want to say a last word. So the last word of this session is yours.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say two things very quickly. First is that everything that I've heard, I think you're doing an excellent job in the ministry, and I really congratulate you, and the idea of a case study sounds perfect, because that's so useful also to codify what you're doing. The second one is that, as you said, that I made it sound that it's very difficult to be a public service leader. I would say that it's not easy, but I would say that this is such an exciting time to work with civil service, with all the changes happening in the world, truly being capable of making a difference in the world. So I would not encourage anybody, for the reason it being difficult, not to go to public service leadership